So the trade deadline was fun, right? San Antonio got their point guard of the future to put next to Wemby. Kuzma finally gets to play in a professional basketball team again. What else? Oh yeah, Luka went to the Lakers. Look, you're all hoops junkies too, so I'm sure you mainline NBA podcasts for the next 72 hours after the trade dropped that Sunday night. I know I sure did. There's not much else to say on the topic. The Dallas Mavericks, after 2 decades of missing out on free agents, traded for AD's twilight years in exchange for the closest thing to a golden ticket in the modern NBA. A 25-year-old on a long-term deal who actually likes his situation. So, because of a combination of new owner syndrome, fat shaming, and Kobe's former management team, the LA Lakers are set up to have a generational star for the next decade of basketball. It's a good thing, too. Those Laker fans have been hurting for a star. Still, this trade did remind me of the last blockbuster trade that brought the Lakers a superstar. Well, the one before AD. And Dwight, I guess. That's right, I'm talking about the 2011 trade that brought Chris Paul to Lakerland. Or at least, it almost did. In recent years, this trade has become infamous. Anytime a team acquires too much talent, we have to hear that David Stern vetoed the trade that would have brought Kobe his 6th ring by trading for Chris Paul. If you're a conspiracy nut, a Kobe stan, or someone who just lacks critical thinking skills, this is your gospel. But is any of this true? Let's find out. First things first, there's one word you're not going to hear me say after the end of this paragraph. Veto. Anytime someone brings this trade up, they claim that Stern, acting as commissioner, vetoed the trade. This is false. To be clear, the commissioner can nullify trades between member clubs as outlined in the NBA Constitution. However, that's not what happened here. Stern, the commissioner, did not stop this trade. Stern, the owner, did this. Confused? Let me explain. In the 2000s, the New Orleans Hornets were owned by a guy named George Shinn, a North Carolina businessman who had already been run out of Charlotte due to a string of bad behavior. By 2010, the team were hemorrhaging money. As a result, Shinn looked to offload the team. However, he couldn't find a buyer. Remember, this was before the explosion of international rights and the internet. Owning an NBA franchise wasn't the cash machine that it is today. So who bought the team? Well, the NBA, of course. The other governors ponied up $300 million to get the old owners to go away. Keeping Shinn on was just a bad look, and it was better for the league to look for a buyer in the meantime than continue to lug this guy around. So now the NBA had a team without an owner. So who would run the team? David Stern, of course. This right here is where the structure of the NBA really starts to matter. Legally, the NBA is a single entity. That means the 30 owners really own a 3.3% stake in the same business and are assigned the role of governor of their respective team. That's the only reason things like the draft, player trading, and contract limits can exist. Think about it. Imagine if Apple, Amazon, and Microsoft each agreed to a max contract for the average programmer. That would be collusion. Conversely, sports clubs in Europe are independent and have much more autonomy over things like spending and sponsorships. So yeah, in this case, David Stern became the owner of the New Orleans Hornets while the league looked for a new owner. The problem is that this was 2010. Unemployment was still north of 8%, and not too many guys with a few $100 million lying around were looking to buy into one of the league's smallest markets. So Stern stayed the owner. That brings us to December 8th, 2011. On this day, it was reported that the Lakers, Hornets, and Rockets had agreed to a 3-team trade sending Chris Paul to LA, Pau Gasol to Houston, and Lamar Odom went to New Orleans alongside some young assets. It was reported, and the young NBA Twitter space exploded. And then the trade got called back. Stern prevented the trade from going through. Days later, Paul packed his bags for LA, just not to play for the Lakers. And we all know what happened after that. Kobe played in a series of uninspiring teams until his Achilles gave out, and he bowed out of basketball in 2016. The Clippers built a fun team comprised of Chris, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, JJ Redick, coached by Doc Rivers, that were plagued by drama, injuries, and ownership scandal. In 2018, Chris went to Houston, followed by OKC in 2020, Phoenix the following year, and so on. I think this trade lives on because of what could have been. We like to conjure up these alternate realities because the one we got was pretty dull. What if Kobe got his 6 with Chris at his side? What if Paul went up a level and took some of the load off of Kobe's shoulders, and he doesn't tear his Achilles in 2013, and we get a few more years of him in the NBA? All those sound really cool. Instead, 2 of the hardest working guys of their generation, guys who cared about their diet, about their stretching, all that, got stuck with bad management that left them ringless for the rest of their careers. And look, it's not like Stern did New Orleans any favors. Eventually, the team gets bought by the Benson family, who ran a generational big out of town in 2019 and are currently in the process of doing it all over again. If there's a winner here, it's Donald Sterling. He got to inflate the value of the Clippers before selling them for a massive profit a few years later. And I think that's why we're drawn to conspiracy in sports and in other places. It's so much easier to think that Stern is this villain bent on screwing over Kobe and the Lakers because he's fun to root against. Trust me, this isn't the 10th worst thing that Stern's done. It's less fun to think that he tried to do right by a team and messed up. But that's what happened, whether we like it or not. Of course, it could have been worse. It's not like Stern traded Luka Doncic. Who could be dumb enough to do something like that?